Uh, and a warm welcome to you to Dr. Vasundhara Philyaza. In continuation of SGMF's efforts to bring art and cultural webinars and other such interactions, today we have with us Dr. Vasundhara Philyaza, who's coming on board to share her knowledge on this important topic and relevant topic to us, Vijayanagara to Karnataka. She has been very passionate about this and Sanskrit and Kannada culture and has been researching on the topic since about the 1960s. She works alternatively in India to explore the archaeological and literary past of our country, and in France to encourage knowledge, appreciation of culture and civilization. While she dwells on Indian generals, she focuses on Karnataka in particular. She has been researching this topic in her chosen field since about the 1960s, like I mentioned, including several temple sites like Hampi, Badami, and the Mukteshwar temple. Her speciality is that she has translated more than 150 Kannada inscriptions into French with regard to Hampi. A prolific writer, she has published more than 26 articles in Kannada, French, and English. I welcome you today, Dr. Vasundhara, and it'd be wonderful to hear you. A warm welcome from all of us at SGMF. To all our attendees, the session is...
I don't hear you.
I think we have a small glitch technically from Mrs. Mainey's side.
Warm welcome. There is at the bottom of your speaker, and we'll take it to her at the end of the session. So over to you, Archana, and on from there.
Thank you, Geeta, and welcome, Dr. Vasundhara. So just a quick, little tip for everyone who's online. We have the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. You can please type in your questions during the course of the session or after the session. We will take 3 or 4 questions from that to Dr. Vasundhara once she finishes her lecture. So without any further delay, please may I invite Dr. Vasundhara Kawali to please, begin her lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall I start now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You may begin. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak about, share my ideas about how this Vijayanagara became Karnataka. You all call it Vijayanagara Empire, but its original name was Karnataka. Karnataka Samrajya, Karnataka Empire. And I want to show you how this one, and the Vijayanagara Empire is a misnomer, and Karnataka Samrajya is the original name, and we get that name in inscriptions and in literary sources and everywhere. But this Vijayanagara Empire, the name given to the Karnataka Samrajya is Vijayanagara Empire, it's a misnomer, and it is given by the Europeans. And how it became Karnataka became Vijayanagara in the mouths of Europeans, I'll just trace it. I'll give you this history of how Vijayanagara became Karnataka, and then I'll give you the history of Karnataka itself. And just to start with, I'll give you a brief idea about how the first cartographers, first geographers, how they were able to place the name of Hampi, Vijayanagar on the map. And this cartographer, the cartographer was, next photo please. The cartographer was James Runnel, a British cartographer, and he was in charge of preparing a map of South India. By James Runnel was in charge of it, and how the documentation was so scanty at that time, and how he says that here he says while preparing the map. Here, by preparing the map and positioning not only the Vijayanagara Empire, but other places also. He says that it is so scanty, the documentation, that even today, there is hardly we are able to distinguish the realm of Vijayanagara with that of Narsanga. We cannot we cannot decide whether they were two distinct kingdoms or formed only one. And further, he says that finally Vijayanagara conquered the Narsinga's kingdom, and it became only Vijayanagara Empire. And why it became Vijayanagara Empire? Why they were calling it Vijayanagara Empire? Because these Portuguese who came to India in the 15th century. That time, this Karnataka Samrajya was very much prosperous, and when they came, the Salva dynasty was there. There were three dynasties: Sangama, Salva, and Tulva. Salva dynasty was on the throne, and Salva Narsinga was on the throne, and Portuguese, when they came, they were not able to pronounce the name of the empire as Karnataka. So they called the name of the empire as Narsanga, name of the king whom they met. And then the capital, Vijayanagara, was also equally difficult for them to pronounce. So they called the capital Bisnaga. So that's how. And gradually, when the Salva dynasty was over, the time of Salva dynasty was over, and Tulva dynasty came to the power. That is Krishna Devaraya, Achyutaraya. This is Tulva dynasty. So this Narsanga was forgotten, and so they started employing the same name, Bisnaga, for the capital and as well as for the empire. So the Portuguese, he started saying Bisnaga for the empire. Only the Paez and Nunes who came to Hampi in the 16th century for 1422, 1522 and 1535, they called the empire Narsanga and the capital Bisnaga. But later on, Cesar Frederici and others who came, they were saying Bisnaga for the empire as well as for the capital. So that's how it became Bisnaga, Bisnaga, Bisnagara Empire. And how he was able to place it on the map, position it on the map, James Runnell. It was very difficult for him because the documentation was very poor, very scanty, and only some of the European geographers who have worked on the map of the Indian Ocean, and they were able to say something about these longitudes and latitudes and the position of these places. And with that, these navigators who were sailing, they have also left their diaries, and on the basis of these things, he was he was able to prepare some map. And when he could, on the basis of their reports, he could, they have given longitudes and latitudes, and he came up to Hampi. And there he asked people, what is this place? And they said, Aulepatna, Alepatna. And she said, what is this Alepatna? And that is Alepatna, old place. And he was wondering what is this old place. And on observing the place and also reading the reports of navigators and also the European geographers, he was able to place it on the South Indian map like this. Next. Yes. So on the now this is about Vijayanagara. I show you. So this is Bisnaga, I don't know whether you are able to see it, Bisnaga. And he has written it as Bijanigur, and he has written, showed it on the map as la capital de capital the Canarian, yes, Canarian Empire. Yes, the capital of the Canarian Empire. Yes. This map, he prepared it in 1760. Yes, this is, thank you. This map was prepared in 1760. And what I'm showing you, this is the third edition in 1800. This map was prepared for, just I open some anecdote I tell you. This map was prepared for some geographer in England, undoubtedly. Some Faden, Faden or Faden, his name is F-A-D-N. I pronounce it in the French way, Faden, Faden. And this map was prepared for him. And I don't know who bought this map, this book, Memoirs of Hindustan. This book, the book is entitled Memoirs of Hindustan. And who bought it, I don't know afterwards. And afterwards in 1940s, it was in my father-in-law's bibliothèque, library. My father-in-law, Jean Fuliosa, he was a very great Indologist and of international repute. And he, in his personal library, there were more than 10,000 books. And we have inherited 1,000 books of his. And in that heritage, we have this Memoirs of Hindustan by James Randall. And it is such a coincidence on this, on our copy, some previous owner, I don't know who, whether Faden or who it was, just a minute, who has written in pencil this capital of the Canarian Empire or Carnatic. This is something, what a surprising coincidence. This map, he has made it as, he has written it in pencil, Carnatic. It is not my father-in-law's writing, somebody else. So previous owner of this book, but he has written this, Carnatic. So people were knowing in 1800 that name of the empire was Carnatic and not Bisnaga. And how this Bisnaga came into the usage, that in 1898, yes, 1898, there was one Portuguese scholar, Senor Lopez. He found the chronicles of Paix and Nunes in the National Library in Paris, and he published them in Portuguese, Reich de Bisnaga. And Sewell, he took that publication and he translated those two chronicles into English, and then he gave some introduction as introduction to these chronicles, history of Karnataka's king, Sangama, Salva, and Pulva. These three dynasties he had given. And unfortunately, he entitled his book A Forgotten Empire, and into bracket Vijayanagar. And that is how the people started calling it as Vijayanagar Empire. And they are now, the name of forgotten, Karnataka Empire is forgotten, and Vijayanagar Empire came into the practice. So this is how Karnataka became Vijayanagar in the mouths of Europeans. And Sewell had disseminated this error in India, and very religiously everyone is carrying that name as Vijayanagar Empire. And sometimes people don't like if I say that the name of the empire was Karnataka. Okay, this is next one, please. And in 1800, this plan of Hampi was prepared by Mackenzie. And there are very funny names he had identified. By 1800 already, Hampi came to be known as amongst the Europeans, not at about now with the Indians. And this map was prepared by Colonel Mackenzie. And he gives some names here, some identifications, and he identifies as Hale Aramane, old palace. And now that old palace is identified as Harihara Rayana Aramane in the palace area. And so, and also this now what we call it as a Lotus Mahal on the site. On Mackenzie's map, it is showed as Krishna Devaraya's bedroom. So like this, funny names are given, funny names are given, but people were able to tell them something, and that has been showed on the map. But they should not be taken. They should not be taken as historical maps. But map is very important, so that helps us to prepare a map, the correct map of Hampi site. Okay. Next one, please. Next photo, please. This is the town plan of Hampi, prepared early in 1800. And in 1980s, not 1800, 1980s. And in the 1980s, George Michel came to work with us, and we prepared a kind of international team, and he prepared there is a aerial photo in the museum, Hampi Museum, and on the basis of that aerial photo, he prepared a contour of this Hampi site, and he gave it to us. And my husband and myself, we went to, we walked on the site, step by step, each and every monument. We saw them, and as I know, as we were already knowing about the site and the epigraphs, so we were able to place those monuments, and sometimes we have given the name and all these things. So it was prepared in the early 1980s, this map. And one thing, where in 1985, 86, there was an India festival in Paris. And in 85, India was proposing to UNESCO to register the name of Hampi, enter the name of Hampi on the heritage list. So at that time, they sent some documents and also some photos, but it was not enough. So UNESCO's branch is ICOMOS, the Institute for Monuments and Sites. That first, this ICOMOS studies the Sadhana site and then proposes to the UNESCO whether it should be written on the heritage list or not. But the documentation given by the India government was not sufficient. So ICOMOS contacted the Musée Guimet, and Musée Guimet, it's a very big museum in Paris. UNESCO is in Paris, and ICOMOS is also in Paris. So the Musée Guimet is a very big museum on Indian and Southeast Asian monuments. So when they contacted Musée Guimet, conservator said, we don't have much more documents than what the India government has given you. But Mr. Filiosa, Professor Filiosa works on Hampi, you contact him. And when Professor Filiosa was contacted, he said, it's not me, my wife works, and on Hampi, she can give you. So like this, myself and my husband, we got involved in ourselves in this writing of this, for providing documents to the UNESCO for the registration of the name of Hampi on the World Heritage List. And just at that time, this India Festival was going on, and the Committee of Indian Committee of India Festival gave me about some budget to hold an exhibition on Hampi monuments, Hampi ruins. And so we were able to, whatever the money that was given to us by the India government, we were able to hold an exhibition of more than 120 photos of Hampi town. And my husband we were already working on Vithala temple and Hampi. So my husband had prepared map, town line drawings of Vithala temple. So some line drawings we have put, and my husband also paints. So some of his paintings like this, more than 150 exhibits we put. And the luck would have it, we didn't get hall anywhere. So, and it was, but I could get the hall only in the Ecomos building. Ecomos building was just next to our house. So we were able to hold an exhibition there. And on seeing our exhibition, the Ecomos said, we will not take group of monuments as proposed by the India government, but we'll take the whole site of Hampi for the conservation, and we will decide which are to be preserved as, which are to be taken as intensive conservation, and which are buffer zone and all that. And they prepared a map and they have given. And now I don't know what is happening. We are, my role is over in preparing this exhibition, and this is how Hampi, the name of Hampi, entered on the list of heritage list. So this is the map of Hampi we prepared, and this now I'll concentrate on this is the not only Hampi, but it is Vijayanagara, town plan of Vijayanagara city. But now I shall concentrate on the origin of Hampi. This was, you see, this was known as Hampi. All this other portion, it was not there. This city, heart of the city, what is where there is the palace and all that, this was not there. This was like a forest. I think this was uninhabited. And go up, please. So here is the temple of Virupaksha. And so this was known as Hemakuta and Hampi. So up to this Krishna temple was not there. And so this was also included in Hampi. And if you see if you read some literary works before Krishna Deva Raya, this whole area was called Vijaya Kalyanapura. And so this is Virupaksha temple. This is Virupaksha temple, and it's a Ter Bidi. This is Ter Bidi. Now people wrongly call it as bazaar, but it was Ter Bidi, and inscriptions and literary sources say that it was Ter Bidi. So how this Virupaksha temple was, and how this here Hampi was before the commencement of this new empire, new Karnataka empire. So I'll just give you the picture of how it was. So yes, I just a minute. I'll show you. So this was the extension of Hampi. This was this is here is the river Tungabhadra, and this is Matanga Parvata. Please don't move the map, please. No. Please come back to Virupaksha. No,
yeah,
we are on the,
yes, just 1 minute.
No, this is Vithalapura. No, you go to Virupaksha. Yes. This is, don't move. So I'll show you. So this is the Tungabhadra river, and from here to there's a canal. So probably there was a small rivulet here. River was going on, and during the historical period, that was converted into a big canal, and that is called now Hiriya Kaluve. And so this is Hemakuta. This was known as Hampi and also Hemakuta. So this was all. And this Krishnapura was not there, and there were many Shaiva temples here everywhere. This was a Shaiva center. So how this Virupaksha temple, I'll show you how it made. Next, please. Next photo, please. Yes, this is Virupaksha. So this was all about Virupaksha and this whole region. And there were number of Shaiva temples here. All this on Hemakuta. And unfortunately, these British historians, when they went there, went to Hampi, they were saying that these are Jaina temples, because there is one Jaina temple in the same model. They thought that it is Jaina, these are Jaina temples. And in old guides also, you will see these are Jaina temple. These are identified as Jaina temples in old guides of Hampi. But these are not Jaina temples. They were all Shaiva temples. Hindu gods were there, Jaina, Shiva, Shaiva temples. And here and there, you will see some temples dedicated to Vishnu. For that, you have to read the inscriptions and you will come to know about it. For writing a history of any place, you must read inscriptions. So then these legends and these things, they don't help you much. So now through the inscriptions, you will be able to identify many Shaiva temples on this here, on the Hemakuta and Virupaksha temple. This is Virupaksha temple complex, and and the Virupaksha temple, it was all one whole unit. There were no enclosure walls. These are enclosure walls. There were no enclosure walls here, but during the period of the Karnataka kings, during Sangama period, one big wall was built, this external big wall, and then during Krishnadevaraya's period, internal enclosure wall was added. So like this, during these times of our Karnataka kings, this practice of building enclosure walls to the temples started. That's a new thing our Karnataka kings have started. Next slide, please. Yes. So now the name of Hampi appears in the inscriptions as early as in the 7th century. This Chalukya Vinayaditya, Badami Chalukya king Vinayaditya, he came to Hampi. He halted on the banks of Pampa Tirtha for making some grants. And that time, Hampi was a small Shaiva place, Shaiva center, as I told you. And there were a number of small temples. And if you go to if you go to this Virupaksha temple in Hampi, to the north, that is on the way to the river, there are small, in the Virupaksha temple complex, on the way to the river by the northern gate, you will see innumerable small temples dedicated to Shiva. In my opinion, it is my personal opinion, probably the temple of Virupaksha, the shrine of Virupaksha, it was a very small shrine. It was Udbhava Linga, that Linga was here. So this was considered now worshipped as Virupaksha Linga. And the Hampi at that time, not only in Hampi, all of India, whole of India, there was one the Shaiva cult, Shaiva the religion, not cult, Shaiva religion called Lakula Shaiva. And these Lakula, the worry of these Lakula Shaivas, their concern was that there should be peace and order in the society. So so what they said, Shiva is the main god, and the other gods like Vishnu and other gods, they are emanated from Shiva. So they should be equally worshipped with the same devotion, with equal devotion. You should not make any distinction between Shiva is the important god, he is more important, and Vishnu is not that important, he is secondary. Or Vishnu is more important, and Shiva. You should not make the distinction like this. So in many Shaiva temples of the Lakula Shaiva period, you get this linga, Shiva linga, or this Mukhalinga or something, and sometimes Shiva in the form of image also, and just by the side or in the other sanctus, other cella, other garbhagriha, you get the image of Vishnu. Or in some temples, you get this Shiva linga here and the Vishnu image there. And so this probably, it is my opinion, it is my personal research, results of my personal research, results. And the Virupaksha Linga, this Pampa Virupaksha Linga, this was very small. and it was the Udbhava Linga. So it is just at the level of the ground, and then the Vishnu was there. And they tell local story that I'm not going to that story. And later on, when this Shaivism began to develop, and and the kingdoms began to come one after another, and after the Badami Chalukyas, in the history we have, in Karnataka history we have Rashtrakutas, and after Rashtrakutas there come the king of dynasty of Kalyan Chalukya on the northern north of Tungabhadra, and on the south of Tungabhadra you have Vaisala Empire. And so this during this Kalyan Chalukya period, the Lakula Shaivas become, the Lakula Shaiva religion gets more importance. And in this Lakula Shaiva religion, there are four sections, Kalamukha, Pashupata, Kaula and Kapalika. Kaula and Kapalika, they were in the north of India, and Kalamukha, Pashupata, they were in south. And these Kalamukha and Pashupata, they were not doing any Vamachara, and they were the very strict followers of Vedic path. Vedic path means Saumya Marga, and they were studying Veda, Upanishad, and Vyakarana, Bharata's Natya Shastra, and all that. And for them, Shiva is an important god, and all other gods are not equally important, but they are emanated from Shiva. So first Shiva should be worshipped, and all other gods also should be worshipped in the same sanctum. And for them, Shiva is important, but Shiva is very subtle. The form of Shiva is very subtle. For worship, we use the linga, but for worshipping, for the puja, while doing the puja, mentally you have to invite Shiva. And this Shiva image is very subtle. You cannot imagine how it is. So, according to their texts, Lakula Shiva text, for the good of the world, for the happiness of the world, Shiva, this Shiva, who was very subtle, from him emanated Sadashiva Tattva. And this Sadashiva, he has 5 faces, and his 5 faces are, the 4 faces are turned towards 4 directions, and the 5th one is on the head. And this is latent, it is avyakta. Vyakta, now all these 4 faces are vyakta, and that one is avyakta, so it is not there. So this becomes very popular, this worshipping of Sadashiva with Mukhalinga, with Mukha, with faces. So this is Sadashiva Linga during Kalyan Chalukya period. And that time, according to my research work, this Virupaksha temple underwent some changes. So probably this this original Virupaksha Linga was stopped for some time, and new Virupaksha Linga with faces, it was installed in what we see now in that in the temple of Virupaksha. Now what we see, the linga there. So this Virupaksha Linga, face with faces, he was worshipped. And this Virupaksha Linga is associated with his Shakti, his consorts. And for the first time in the Virupaksha temple inscription, it is now, that inscription is found in the Durga temple. A shrine for goddess Pampa was also built, and she was in a separate shrine. It's the first example in my, according to my research work. And if you know any other example, you can tell me, because my knowledge is very limited. And this is the first time I got the reference that goddess, the consort of the main deity, there was a shrine for the consort of the main deity, was built in the same temple complex. There were shrines for goddesses, that is a different thing. But in the same temple complex, the shrine for the goddess of the main deity was not existing, in many Badami Chalukya and Badami Chalukya temples. And in Kalyan Chalukya temple, Kalyan Chalukya times, we get this is the first reference. In other temples, I didn't see any shrine for goddess. Only in Hampi, in the Virupaksha temple, this one. And this Virupaksha linga for 5 faces. This linga was worshipped till the end of this Karnataka Samrajya. And you know the history of Karnataka, Vijayanagara. I say Karnataka, but it's a Vijayanagara Samrajya. And you know, in 1565, there was a Talikota war, Talikota battle. And in that, unfortunately, our Hindu kings lost the battle, and Hampi was completely abandoned by about 1580. 1580, not in 1565. We say that the Muslims came and devastated the capital, and it was abandoned. No, it is not a history. That is not a history. It's a hearsay account. Actually, if you read the inscriptions, the last king Sadashivaraya, he was ruling from Vijayanagara up to 1580, and the inscriptions say that Sadashivaraya was ruling from the golden throne of Vijayanagara, capital of Vijayanagara. And he was ruling over Karnataka Samrajya from the capital, Vijayanagara. So it was abandoned only, and then after the battle, Sadashiva, there was a fight between Sadashivaraya and Aliya Ramaraya's brother, who survived the war. And there was a fight between Sadashivaraya's family and Ramaraya's family for the throne. And in that anger, they burnt each other's palaces. And Sadashiva, Ramaraya's brother, Sri Tirumala, he left the capital and he went to Penukonde, but Sadashivaraya remained in the capital and he ruled over Karnataka till 1580. So it was not abandoned. And gradually, when in 1580, after the death of Sadashivaraya, gradually the capital was abandoned, and all these vandals and treasure seekers, thieves, they started devastating the capital. Next slide, please. And so this Virupaksha Linga was worshipped till the end of this Karnataka Samrajya. And after the battle of Talikota, we don't know what happened when the capital was completely abandoned in 1580. And in the middle of the 17th century, that is in 1650, according to the recent research work by one Mrs. Desai, her ancestor, Vishtapaya, he was inspired by the Swamis of these Vidyaranya Pitha to worship this Virupaksha Linga. So it is he who, according to her research, it is he, instead of worship, in the place of this linga, Mukhalinga, he installed this new small linga. This was. So this is one. This is the third time. Now this is the third time. This Virupaksha temple is revisioned, redone. So this Virupaksha Linga now, this Virupaksha Linga is kept in a corner in the Shukanasi, and now this version, this Virupaksha Linga installed by Vishtapaya, this is worshipped, and he had installed it in the linga. It looks like Uddhava Murti, but it's not with Uddhava Linga. It is installed by a human being, person. So this Virupaksha Linga is worshipped after 1650. And also here renovated and rebuilt some parts in the temple and all that. It is her domain, so that is not the part of my subject. I'm not going to deal with that. Next image, please. And this Vishtapaya, he was a Shakta. And for Shaktas, the Bhuvaneshwari is a very important goddess. Until we have but more than 3,000 inscriptions of this Karnataka kings, but not a single inscription mentions about Bhuvaneshwari. And I was wondering, who is this Bhuvaneshwari and why is she so important now? And it is she, and according to the legend, it is she who showered gold upon Vidyaranya and all that. And you know that story. I'm not going into details. And I was wondering. And once I was giving, and I was not getting any clue anywhere. And once I was giving a lecture in the Indira Gandhi National Center in Delhi, and I said, well, no, we don't get any reference to Bhuvaneshwari in the inscriptions, nor in the literary sources, nor in Pampa Mahatmya, because we are working on Pampa Mahatmya. We are not getting where, I don't know from where did she come and why she became so prominent. And somebody told me, probably there were Shaktas in the temple. So you see, madam, for Shaktas, Bhuvaneshwari is very important. So on coming back, I inquired with that lady for Mrs. Desai. She's a descendant of Bishtapaya, she says. So she said that Bishtapaya was probably a Shakta. And so it is Bishtapaya who must have introduced the worship puja of Bhuvaneshwari. And now what is the puja and all these rituals, they are taking place in the Virupaksha temple. They are all Shakta type. And probably this Bishtapaya, from Bishtapaya's period, this Vidyaranya Pitha is also there. And they are all Shaktas. So Shakta probably. And this Bhuvaneshwari image is there. And this was little, yes. And in this Bishtapaya's family in the 18th century, there was, that is 1700 and all, there was one person who wrote this Virupaksha Vasantotsava Champu. And in that Virupaksha Vasantotsava Champu, it is said that there were the chariots dragged during this Vasantotsava, this Vasanta festival, chariots were dragged. And while in those chariots, there was a sage called Vidyaranya. He was sitting in one of the chariots, and in the other, this Pampa Virupaksha were there. And even this practice is going on even today. And so there was, in the 18th century, probably there was one saint called Vidyaranya. And somebody, by the sheer devotion to this Vidyaranya and to goddess Bhuvaneshwari, he had concocted this story that Bhuvaneshwari showered gold upon Vidyaranya, and the Vidyaranya was able to, Vidyaranya met Harihara, and he was able to found a new empire. And you know the story, the empire, and it was Vijayanagara, and he called the empire Vijayanagara because of the Vidyaranya, etc., etc. I'm not going into details. So this is how this Vietnam Bhuvaneshwari Vidyaranya story starts in 18th century, and it is this legend is concocted by sheer devotion. It is not historical. There are no documents to prove this one. Only there are 3 copper plates. One they are branded as fake ones. One is a copy of the paper copy, and the second one is a copy, but there are no proofs to say it is authentic one. Recently, the third one is found. It is it has all the features to say that it is a true one. It is not a fake one, but unfortunately, the language is very corrupt. Nobody can make out what it is saying, especially the details of the grant. So it is very difficult to accept that Vidyaranya was there at the time of foundation of the empire, and he had played an important role. And I'll come to that point why Vidyaranya was not there and who was there. And recently, some 10, 15 years ago, there was one Swami of this Vidyaranya Pitha in Hampi, and instead of this old statue, he got a new statue of Bhuvaneshwari made, and now this new statue of Bhuvaneshwari is worshipped. That shows that means that the temples can be remaniated, revised and revisioned time to time, and old statues can be replaced. And also in this temple, yeah, this same Swamiji, he had these seats of these gods and goddesses more elevated. So they are like this. It gives us the clue that the temples, what we see them now, probably were rearranged, reorganized, revisioned at different times. So this Bhuvaneshwari story is not historical. It's only 18th century legend. Next, please. So that I told you that name of the empire was Karnataka Samrajya, and this capital was Vijayanagara. So we have a very beautiful inscription from the South Canara. It's from Kaikini, and I have given you one example. If you read the volume of Vijayanagara inscriptions published by ICHR in the second volume, and these volumes are published under the general editorship of S.H. Rithi and B.R. Gopal, two great stalwarts of epigraphy. And in the second volume, Professor Rithi writes the very good introduction, and in that he says that name of the empire was Karnataka and never Vijayanagara. And for that, to justify that, he gives more than 30 inscriptions, reference to 30 inscriptions apart from literary sources. So, and here you see this Jambu Dvipada, Bharata Kshetra, Aryakhanda, Pariveshtikondida, Pratiparna, Karnataka Desha. You see, you have Karnataka Desha, Maharajadhani, Karnataka Deshada, Maharajadhani, Vijayanagarada, Puravaradhishwara, Rajadhiraja, the name of the king. So we get this Karnataka Desha and Vijayanagara very often, Karnataka Desha, the Rajdhani, Vijayanagara. You get this reference in not only in Kannada inscriptions, also in Telugu and Tamil and in Sanskrit inscriptions. Next, please. So you have a translation here. And you cannot have better example than these inscriptions to say that name of the empire was Karnataka and never Vijayanagara. So now at least, and you should be proud to know that, because now our state, Karnataka, in the 14th and 14th to 16th centuries, it attained the regal state. The regal state, and it became the whole of South India, comprising of Andhra, Tamil Nadu, and portions of Kerala and Maharashtra. So the Karnataka Samrajya was not only just to our Karnataka state, but it was comprising of Tamil Nadu, Andhra, whole of Andhra, whole of Tamil Nadu, plus the portion of Kerala and portions of Maharashtra. So it was a regal state, and it's continued for the first time in our history, and unfortunately that's the last time in our history, that our state achieved the regal state. So we should be proud of it, and we should continue to call this empire as Karnataka Samrajya and not Vijayanagara Empire, which is a misnomer. Next, please. So I told you that there was no Vidyaranya at the time of foundation, and the person who was there was Vidyaranya. Sorry, not Vidyaranya, but Madhavacharya. And this Madhavacharya was the disciple of very important and very great scholar, Vidyatirtha, who was a pontiff of Sharda Pitha at Sringeri. And this Vidyatirtha was a very far-sighted person. And in 1336, he saw that the whole of South India is in very chaotic conditions, and and all the Hindu kingdoms have fallen into the victims to the Muslim invasion. So it was his idea, now probably it was his idea that for the whole of South India, we should have only one kingdom and one king. And the whole of South India should be under one banner. And all others should obey that king. And at that time, it was in 1336. Why I say 1336? Because it was in 1336, a meeting was held. And who was that king who was responsible for holding that meeting? It was Faisal Ballala III. All the Hindu kingdoms fell victim to the Muslim invasion. You know that from 1295, Muslims began to invade the South India. And by about 1325, it was completely devastated. And in 1330, the only surviving king was our Faisala king, Ballala III. And he was striving hard. The Muslims were everywhere. And the whole of Tamil Nadu was occupied by Muslims. And so he was striving hard to chase push out those Muslims from the south. He was trying, and at that time, probably it is it is Ballala. He must have met this pontiff Vidyatirtha, not Vidyaranya. Vidyaranya was not there, and pontiff Vidyatirtha, and Vidyatirtha told them that we should have one kingdom in them. And in 1336, Dhatu Samvatsara, in the legend it is said that in 1336, Dhatu Samvatsara, Harihara met Vidyaranya, and this new empire was founded. But it's not Vidyaranya, it is not Harihara Bukka, it was Ballala III. Probably he met Vidyatirtha. And in 1336, Dhatu Samvatsara, not 13, in 1258, Shaka 1258, corresponding to 1336, in this Dhatu Samvatsara, Ballala, he went to supervise to the northern frontiers of his kingdom. Northern frontiers means Hampi and other places around Hampi, Kampili and all these places. So he has gone there, and that in the legend is said that the legend, in the form of legend, it has come, and thought that it was Harihara. And Ballala, he must have met this one. And to have one kingdom, and all the vassals and relatives of Ballala should their support to one king, and not only this king, but also to the successors of Faisalas. And so Faisal Ballala was very old, and his son was also equally old, getting old. His son was called Virupaksha Ballala. He was, and also in another inscription, he's called as Hampi Vadiyar. So he was ruling, he was there. He was governing this Hampi region, and Ballala the third, he was trying to chase Muslims from south of India, push away these Muslims from south of India. And in that struggle, he even lost his life. And that was in 1342. So in 1336, he went to supervise, to check the northern frontiers of his kingdom. And there he came to know that he should have Hampi as a strategic point, and he should have take that as a capital to check the forthcoming alien invasions. So it is he who chose Hampi as a capital, and he appointed his son as the ruler of that Hampi, as the protect Rajapala of Hampi and that region. And he was and he built a new town, and that he called it Vasapatana. I'll show you that one. And to get the support from all these all the vassals of Ballala and his relatives. Probably it is Vidyatirtha. He appointed Madhavacharya to make propaganda, convince all the others to support this Ballala family for having one kingdom, and also their successors. And he must have, Vidyatirtha must have thought of selecting these sons of Sangama, this Harihara and Dukka, as the successors of Ballala family, because Ballala fourth did not have any issues, so that family would have finished, and so he had none. And this, we don't have any documents except in one folk song we have ಬನ್ನಿಯ ಗಿಡ ಹುಟ್ಟಿ ಹೊನ್ನಿನ ಮಳೆಗರೆದು ಹಂಪ್ಯಾಗ ಹೊನ್ನಿನ ಮಳೆಗರೆದು ಚನ್ನಪಟ್ಟಣಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊಳೆ ಹರಿದು ಚನ್ನಪಟ್ಟಣಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊಳೆ ಹರಿದು ಹಂಪ್ಯಾಗ ಬನ್ನಾಣ ವೀರ ಗುಟ್ಟಾಗಿ ಹಂಪ್ಯಾಗ ಬನ್ನಾಣ ವೀರ ಗುಟ್ಟಾಗಿ. But it is not mentioned who is that Veera. But so probably there was one meeting was held under the Banni, under the Shemi tree, that is Banni is Shemi, Banni tree, and meeting was held. And this Veera is, I don't know whether it can be identified with the Vaisala Ballala III or future kings Harihara and Gupta. Anyway, one Veera had come and it was decided. And this gives us also clue that why in the Vijayanagara, this Karnataka, period of Karnataka kings, why this Banni became this during this Dasara festival. This Banni tree became so important. This Shemi tree, we do that only in Karnataka. This practice exists. Shemi tree, we do the puja of Shemi tree, and in North Karnataka we exchange this Shemi leaves, saying that let our relationship remain like gold. It is considered as a gold. So this is probably it was that decision was taken, and it is in Dhatu Samvatsara. It must be in 1336, this decision, and that has transformed into legends. So this Madhavacharya, how we come to know that Madhavacharya became Vidyaranya? So for this, we need not go to any legends or anything. We can see from his works only. This Purana Sara, his first work is Purana Sara. And in Purana Sara, it is his first work. And in Purana Sara, in the last chapter, in the colophon, he says that he was the Madhavacharya. His name is Madhavacharya. Madhavacharya, Harihara Maharaja's Mantrina, Madhavacharya Pranitin. This is the work by Madhavacharya, minister of Harihara. Harihara, the first one. And we know that this is from, there's no date, but from other works, we come to know that this was Harihara the first. The name of the king he had mentioned was Harihara the first. And how we come to know that, we have to see this Parashara Madhaviya, second work. You see, Parashara Madhaviya, Parashara Smriti is a Tika. Parashara Madhavacharya wrote a Tika, that is commentary to Parashara Madhaviya, Parashara, and now it is known as Parashara Madhaviya. His work is known as Parashara Madhaviya. And in the beginning of this Parashara of Madhaviya, he gives all the details about his family, who is his father, mother, and the Gotra and Bharadvaj Gotra, etc., etc. So we know that this is the work of Madhavacharya. And in the middle of, in the heart of the work, very often, in the body of the text, very often he cites Purana Sare. We have, it is said that, he doesn't say we have said, it's said in the Purana Sara like this. So if he has not mentioned the name of the author, we cannot say that it's a plagiarism. He has, because it is his own work. So he says in the Purana Sara, it is said, Purana Sara we have said, and this is in the Parashara Madhaviya. He explains, he cites those passages, and he explains other passages in Parasharam. So from Parashara Madhaviya, or Tika for Parashara Smriti, we come to know that Purana Sara is the work of Madhavacharya. And how we come, and then from his next work, Jivan Mukti Viveka, Jivan Mukti Viveka, sorry, it's not Viveka. We know that it is work of Vidyaranya. And how we come to know that Vidyaranya was Madhava, how Madhavacharya became Vidyaranya. Here we get a clue in Jivan Mukti Viveka. And in the wall, the first chapter, in the 11th sloka, he says that in Parashara Smriti Tika, in Parashara Smriti Tika, already 3 sannyas are explained. So here we will explain the 4th one. So when he says we will explain here 4th one, 4th sannyasa, that is Paramahamsa Parivrajaka. So that means already 3 sannyasa he had explained. That means Parashara Madhaviya is his work, we know that, and Jivan Mukti is Vidyaranya. So like this, we come to know that Madhavacharya became Vidyaranya. And his work was so much appreciated for campaigning to get the support of all these vassals and relatives of Faisalas for the new kingdom of Karnataka Samrajya. It became so popular. So gradually and progressively, Vidyatirtha's name is forgotten and Vidyaranya became very popular. And how, secondly, how we come to know that Vidyaranya, Madhavacharya became Vidyaranya, Taittiriya Upanishad, Tika by Sayanacharya. Sayanacharya is Madhavacharya's brother, younger brother. And it is Madhavacharya who told Bukka that Sayanacharya is equally competent to write commentaries on Vedas. And in all Vedic commentaries, Sayanacharya, he mentions Madhavi Ye Vedartha Prakashane. And in all the, and in Taittiriya Upanishad Tika, at the end in the colophon, he says, instead of saying Madhaviye Vedartha Prakashane, he says Madhava Vidyaranya Sambandhi Vedartha Prakashane. His own brother, if he can say that Madhava Vidyaranya Sambandhi, that means Madhavacharya became Vidyaranya. There are, so these 4 works of Madhavacharya and 3 works of Madhavacharya and the work of Sayanacharya help us very clearly to prove that Madhavacharya became Vidyaranya. And unfortunately, gradually, the person who played the key role in the foundation, not in the foundation, commencement of the new empire, Karnataka Samrajya, that Vidyatirtha's name we have forgotten, and we all say Vidyaranya person. So next, please. And there are some in the 50s, 60s, there were some Andhra Telugu historians who were not able to accept that Harihara and Bukka were Kannada origin, and they wanted to prove that they were the Telugu origin. And they proved, they tried their best. And they were in Bukka's inscriptions, we get very often, he was ruling from Vasapattana. And so the historians of Karnataka, they were saying that Bukka was ruling from Vasapattana of Ballala III. Ballala III, he built that new town and he called it Vasapattana. And all these, Telugu historians, they were not able to accept it. But there is one inscription which demolishes their theory that the Bukka, he chose Ballala's Vasapattana as his capital. So you see his Faisala Bhu Vibhu Lakshmi Lapanamam Sri Veera Bukkaraya Samrajya Ramana Ramaniya Vilasa Darpanopamam Vyanisi Sogaisu Vasapattana. The Bukka was ruling there, and is in Vasapattana, which was the shining like the mirror of the Samrajya Ramaramani, the goddess of the kingdom of Bukka, which was like a Lakshmi, which was like a the mirror of the Vaisala Lakshmi's mirror, which was shining like a mirror of Vaisala Lakshmi of Vaisala kingdom. So there are same, the capital of Hosapattana of Hoysalas becomes the capital of the Bukka afterwards. Bukka was the first, second king of the new Samrajya, that is Karnataka Samrajya. Harihara was the first king and Bukka was the second. Next, please. So this is, so this Hosapattana, where was this Hosapattana? And in many inscriptions of the Hoysala Ballala, there are many inscriptions which mentions that he was ruling from Hampe Hosapattana. So where was this Hosapattana? This he chose Hampe, okay, for as the new capital, and this he called it he named his son also as Virupaksha Ballala, was the Vishay Virupaksha Ballala and Hampe Vadiyar, and this. There was not much space here because there were many rocky mountains, so there was not much place here to build a new city. And this is a plain. This is a flat area. Not many rocky mountains are there. So probably he chose this one as the Hosapattana, new town, and he built it, a new town here, and he called it Hosapattana. So very often in his inscriptions, we get Virupaksha, Hosapattana. So this is Virupaksha. They were twin cities. So this Virupaksha and this becomes Hosapattana. So this is how Vietnam. And up to, then in order not to irritate the Hoysala's relatives and the vassals, because they came to support these new kings. And if you see their inscription, if you see the inscriptions, there's a number of Hoysala vassals who came to support these new kings, Harihara and Bukka. And the Harihara and Bukka, they gave them some important posts here and there. So we have so like this, they came to support them. And in order not to hurt their feelings for their old previous kings, so this for a long time, this new town was called as Hosapattana. And only in 1368, the Bukka the first, he changed the name of the capital from Hosapattana to, he called it Vijayanagara Pattana. Because earlier it was called, in some inscriptions we get Vijaya Virupaksha Hosapattana. It was too long. So what Bukka did, he retained Vijaya, because God Virupaksha is in some place, in some texts and inscriptions, he's called Vijaya Virupaksha. And Vijaya Virupaksha was also the name of Hoysala Ballala the fourth. So he retained only Vijaya from the old name, and instead of Pattana, he replaced it as Nagara, Vijaya Nagara. And in the earlier inscriptions of Bukka, in Hampi itself, you get the reference to where Bukkarayana Vijayanagara Pattanada, Vijayanagara Pattanada, etc. So there are some, and he, this fort wall was built during by Ballala III. This, where is this gone? Yes, this is fort wall, and the Bukka, he had repaired it, or I don't know whether he had done it. And so, somewhere these bastions were made, bastions and etc. were created, named. And those bastions, for the some bastions, there are inscriptions. Bukkarayana Vijayanagara Pattanada, the Anegondiga Bagilike Mangala, etc. like this. So for some time it was called Vijayanagara Pattana. So, and gradually that Pattana also dropped out from the usage. And so that is how Vijayanagara came in the usage, and name of the capital was Karnataka Samrajya. Next one, please. So that is how Karnataka Samrajya came and Vijayanagara became its Vijayanagara was the capital, and we should be proud that the name of our state attained once upon a time the regal state, and it dominated the whole of South India, and so it is better that we should call the empire the name of the empire is Karnataka. It is high time for us. We should call the name of the empire is Karnataka Samrajya, Karnataka Empire, and not Vijayanagara. And I hope my lecture was little bit convincing, and there was not many confusions. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I hope I'm on time. Yes, correct, 7 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. You were very, very much on time. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, which is so deep and extensive with us. It must have taken you years and years of research to actually understand and collate all of this information, something which most of us as a younger generation are not able to do today. So thank you for all the dedication and all the time that you have spent in collecting all this information.
Thank you for all your compliments.
I have a few questions that have come in. Very quickly, I'll just get them to you. Shiva Aruni has asked.
Aruni, okay.
Yes.
ICS director.
Okay. So has asked, Edward Morse in 1970s mentioned Vijayanagarapuram.
Which one? Sorry?
Edward Morse in the 1970s has mentioned Vijayanagarapuram in his writings. Do you have a comment on this?
No, I don't know which.
In the 1790s, Edward Morse.
1790s?
Yes. Edward Morse, who was the founder of the Royal Asiatic Society of Bombay,
yes,
has written about a Vijayanagarapuram. Do you have any knowledge or any further information on this?
Thank you for this information. I'll find out. I'll search for it. Okay. And which is this Vijayanagara? I don't know.
Okay.
But writing about what he mentions Vijayanagara.
I don't have the, this is just a question that has been posed, but if any further information comes off.
I'll contact Aruni and I'll discuss about it. 1790, Vijay.
Lakshmi Krishnamurthy says, yes, in the Chidambaram temple complex, yes, there is an independent shrine for the Amman. It is supposed to be the first of its kind. Do you have any idea or any further knowledge on this?
I was told that we lived in Pondicherry for more than 20 years. Okay. And I was told that all these Amman shrines in South India are of Vijayanagara period. But I don't know about this. And I went to Chidambaram and I've seen that Amman shrine. There are paintings on that. And I don't think it was earlier. It was predates Vijayanagara.
Okay. You don't think it predates the Vijayanagara period?
At the later period. And there are captions also. So I don't think it was, it predates Vijayanagara.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for those answers, ma'am. Those are the two questions that have come into us today from our attendees. If yes, we have, so we are also showing your talk live on Facebook as it's going on. So if any further questions come into us, we will, have them emailed to you, and okay, maybe, you could consider those answers at a later date. But thank you so much for spending the evening with us and sharing such valuable information to us. And a very special thank you to
Mr. It was clear and people were able to follow me.
I'm sure they were able to. Okay. And a very special thank you to Mr. Prasad for organizing this lecture for us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you for Yashaswini, who has suggested my name to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you and have a very good evening.
Thank you. Same to you. Okay. I give you that.